In this video, we're going to show you how to build a patio and fire pit just like this in your backyard. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the PatriotDIY channel. Today we're going to be showing you how to build a patio and fire pit in your backyard. If you're like me, you really like to entertain family and friends, and there's really no better way to do that than around a fire pit outside. Now, a job like this can seem pretty intimidating if you're not used to doing this type of stuff, but in this video we're going to show you how we did it. If that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, hit that notification bell, and give us a big old thumbs up. We really appreciate that. Now let's get to it. Now the first thing we did, since the ground in our yard is pretty hard, we wanted to soften that up before we started digging. So I went over the whole area with the aerator. And if you haven't seen our video on aerating your yard, I'll put a link to that right here at the top of the screen so you can check that out. But after aerating, we watered the whole area for a few days to really soften that ground up before we started digging. Then we measured and marked out the area we wanted to build our patio using orange marking paint. And I went over the whole area with our tiller to break up the top layer of soil and make it easier to dig out for the gravel and pavers that we're going to be putting down later. Then we were ready to start shoveling up all that loose dirt, and this was a really big project, so we decided to get the whole crew together to help out with this. It was nice to get the kids involved, and I was actually surprised at how much fun they had helping us out with this. Now, because this part of the process took several hours, it made it a whole lot easier to turn it into a family project. And of course, when we had finally finished, I decided it wasn't quite deep enough for the gravel and pavers that we're going to be putting down. So I went back and tilled and shoveled up the whole area again. Now we can really see this patio start to take shape, and we're really happy with how it's looking. Now it's time to start preparing the area for the fire pit. So I measured and marked out the center of the patio where the fire pit's going to go. And we're going to be putting down a small concrete pad underneath the fire pit. So to mark that out, I just drove a stake into the center and tied a string to it a little over half the diameter of the fire pit itself. And then I looped the end of the string around the nozzle of our paint can and used that to help mark out a perfect circle for our concrete pad. Then it was time to dig out the form for our concrete pad. Now, anytime you're going to be exposing concrete to direct high temperatures, it can have a tendency to crack, so it's important that we make our pad thick enough that it's strong and can handle that heat. You want to make sure the pad's at least 4 inches thick. In our case, we ended up at about 5 inches. Once we had the hole dug to the depth we wanted, I went back and tamped it down so we'd have a nice firm flat surface to work with. Now you want to make sure your fire pit is as level as you can get it, so because I knew that our patio area has a slope to it, I drove in a stake on the high end of our hole to mark the level where the concrete needed to be to match the low side. Then it was time to mix up our concrete. Now the bag does have mixing instructions, but what we ended up doing was just adding a little bit of water at a time until we got the consistency we wanted. And hindsight being 2020, we should have followed the instructions. Our hole is 5.5 foot wide and about 5 inches deep, and it took us 15 50-pound bags to get it up to ground level. Now this is my first attempt at a concrete pad, so I'm not sure I got the consistency exactly right, but we just kept adding water and working it until we got it as smooth as we could, and the end result is going to work out just fine for our purposes. Once I reached the point that I was happy with, I went back with a broom and gave it a rough brushed texture, and ultimately it turned out not bad. We decided to go ahead and start putting down our fire pit before the concrete had set. That way we could use the dead blow hammer to tap the blocks down into place and get them as level as possible. We are using a fire pit kit that you can pick up at most of your landscaping or home improvement stores, and I will put a link to one down in the description below if you want to pick one up for yourself. We got the largest one we could find at about 45 inches inside diameter, and what I like about this kit specifically is that each of the blocks is recessed so that they fit together perfectly, which makes assembling this part very easy. It also comes with a nice wide capstone to complete the look, and we are really happy with how this turned out. We decided to border our patio with pavers, so to prepare for laying down the pavers, we drove in a couple stakes into the corners and stretched a tight string along the edge to give us a reference to help keep the pavers straight and at a consistent height. We also put down a couple inches of sand that we could use to help level the bricks, and once the sand was down, we used a 2x4 to create a flat surface to lay the bricks on. As we put the pavers into place, we made sure to keep them straight along our string, and we used our dead blow hammer to tap them down into place and get the height we wanted. Once we were done with the pavers, we were ready to start putting down our rock. And we used our tractor to move the rock into the patio area, but if you don't have a tractor, this could definitely be done with a wheelbarrow or a dump cart. I did make a mistake here, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. All right guys, I gotta admit, I got a little excited once the rock showed up and I just started dumping it out here and completely forgot that I meant to put down some landscaping fabric first. It happens, but there is no way I'm gonna go back and shovel all that rock back out. So what's there is there. I am gonna go back and make sure I put down landscape fabric right here on our walkway and anywhere else I can. But yeah, mistakes happen, should be fine. So we went back and put down landscape fabric to keep the grass and weeds from growing up in our rocks. And then we finished laying the pavers around our walkway, and it's really starting to look great. Before we started spreading the rock, we backfilled around the pavers to help lock them in place and keep them from moving once we start putting the rock in. Nothing left now but to finish spreading the rock, so we got the crew back together, grabbed some rakes, and got to work. And if you're like us and you don't have enough rakes, a push broom works surprisingly well for spreading rock. One thing you'll find out when you're doing this project is just how difficult it is to get this fire pit perfectly level. And you'll notice that once we got our blocks stacked up and we put our capstone on, it doesn't sit perfectly flat, it rocks back and forth. So what we're gonna do to fix that is we'll take these capstones back off and we're gonna put a nice thick layer of mortar on top of the blocks. And while that's still wet, we'll set the capstones back in place, and that'll give us an opportunity to use a level and tap it down all the way around until we get it perfectly flat. So we went ahead and mixed up our grout in a 5-gallon bucket. At this time we did follow the instructions on the bag, so we got a good consistency with that. And then after removing the capstone, we spread it along those top stones and smoothed it out. And while it was still wet, we put the capstones back in place and then used our dead blow hammer again to tap it down, and we used our level to make sure we could get it as level as we could. It still didn't end up perfectly level, but it's close enough, and we definitely fixed the wobble. Once the job is done, you'll have a nice place to relax and entertain friends. So after all this hard work, we were ready to sit back, relax, and enjoy. All right guys, now that's it for how to build your own patio in your backyard. Now we're not quite finished yet. We do plan on going back and putting some seating out here, as well as some string lights and plants and other things like that to dress it up. And we will go over how we do the lighting and stuff like that in another video. So if you haven't done it yet guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, hit that notification bell, and give us a thumbs up. Hope this video helped you out. If you have any questions, make sure you leave those in the comments. Thanks for watching guys. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.